Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to follow the Right Honourable and Honourable members that have already taken part in this debate. Members will be aware that ordinarily this responsibility would fall to my Right Honourable colleague, the Member for North Belfast, Mr Dodds. I'm sure that Right Honourable and Honourable members will join with me in saying that we look forward to Mr Dodds returning and resuming his place in this House next week after a very short illness. I wish, on behalf of my Right Honourable friends of the Democratic Unionist Party, to welcome many of the priorities laid out in the gracious speech. However, whilst accepting many of these are laudable and worthy of support, I have a feeling that they have been written in every gracious speech over the years, but how to achieve and implement them seems to have escaped the imagination of successive governments. Aspiring to achieve must never be undermined, but we are in very challenging times. The nation looks to this government and this House to provide a legislative programme that will build a strong and vibrant economy, that rewards hard work, while at the same time maintains a caring environment for our disabled, our elderly and disadvantaged. I have no doubt that as this debate continues, we will have many eloquent contributions from across the House expressing the views of our constituents, but we must remember that we are not here to make memorable speeches, but endeavour to work together to build a fair and equitable society for all. No one can deny that there are serious issues that are facing our nation, demands courage and determined leadership, and we have a responsibility to give that. As I've already alluded to, many of the individual priorities outlined in the gracious speech are worthy of support. However, as always, the devil is in the detail. It is our responsibility therefore to carefully scrutinise the detail to ensure that the implementation matches the sentiment. I trust the government will not have a closed mind on how to solve many of the pressing issues, but if opposition parties have wise counsel to give and amendments to present, I trust the government will be courageous enough and willing enough to listen and to act accordingly. I suppose this was one of the shortest gracious speeches in recent times, but it was delivered by Her Majesty in her usual gracious manner. On behalf of the people of Northern Ireland, I wish to thank Her Majesty for her lifelong devotion to service and pray that she will be long spared to continue to address both Houses of Parliament. The DUP welcomes the commitment contained within the gracious speech to strengthen the rules around immigration to this country. The recent and prolonged controversy surrounding the failure to deport the hate-monger Abu Qatada demonstrates the necessity of such reforms. It cannot be right that individuals who hate our freedom, laws and way of life can not only take up residence in this country, but abuse the freedoms that they are afforded to encourage violence and fan the flames of hatred. Over many years, successive governments have talked tough on immigration, but acted differently. Many people across the United Kingdom believe that their patience has been pushed over the limit and demand that their government take resolute and determined action. For too long we have been tinkering around the edges, while at the same time promising that immigration would be properly controlled. The government can rely upon DUP support if it seeks to secure our borders and protect our citizens. The government are clearly aware of the problem of businesses using illegal foreign labour. It is wrong that any company should seek to avoid their responsibilities around issues like national insurance contributions in this way. It is also wrong that people who are here illegally should be denying employment opportunities to those who abide by the rules and live by the law. Private landlords should also take the immigration status of tenants so that our system is not being abused by criminals. Mr. Speaker, we are a tolerant and fair society. Where people are suffering persecution or threat or being exploited, then they can always rely upon the United Kingdom as a safe haven, a welcoming place. But we must ensure that those who would seek to abuse our generosity are deterred from coming here. The government will recognise, and the recent local government elections results confirm, that public cynicism and anger about the political process is at an all-time high. People have come to believe that so-called cast iron guarantees are actually of a much less solid character when put to the test. Nowhere is this more amply demonstrated than the case for a proposed referendum on the United Kingdom's continued membership of and relationship with the European Union. It is not in the interest of politics as a whole that people should be offered such a referendum, but only if they cast a ballot for a particular party. The government will be aware of the increasing tide of public opinion in favour of an in-out referendum on UK membership of the EU. From these benches, I make an offer to the government. Here there are 8 votes in favour of holding such a referendum in this parliamentary term. I know that there are members in all parties, including the overwhelming majority of people even in the coalition, who support such a referendum taking place. The government has it within their power to allow the great national issue to be settled in a short term. I would urge the government to reflect upon that and to act without delay and allow for that referendum to occur. But it does seem the Prime Minister believes he is powerless to introduce legislation that would guarantee a referendum on the European Union after the next election, but anything less will not do. I agree with others who have described the EU as a bureaucratic monstrosity that robs the coffers of our nation, squanders our finances needlessly, and if the Prime Minister feels shackled by his coalition partners, this House is not. Mr. Speaker, this House needs to take this issue into its own hands, having listened to the voice of the people. Let us seize the moment, take the coalition and tell the coalition partners this is the will of Parliament, and they will not be permitted to thwart that will. We will see just exactly what happens, however, and the will of this House is received. Whilst the government uses the gracious speech to outline its priorities for the forthcoming parliamentary term, this House is currently considering an issue which was not only absent from last year's gracious speech, but was also absent from any major party manifesto. The Prime Minister should wish to reflect on whether or not parliamentary time should be devoted to the pushing through the redefinition of marriage. No party has a mandate for this change, and many Conservative activists who have deserted to UKIP have cited this government's pushing this issue through and this legislation through this Parliament as showing that it is out of touch with the day-to-day concerns of ordinary voters. As a representative from Northern Ireland, I welcome the fact that the government proposes to aid those who have been affected through exposure to asbestos in the workplace. Many people in Northern Ireland have been affected by this health risk. The unfortunate reality is that many people who worked in heavy industry have acquired serious health problems as a consequence of asbestos exposure. Thousands have already lost their lives, and it is right that government should help those who are suffering in this regard. The DUP welcomes the fact that the gracious speech was used to deliver the determination that the future of Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands will be a matter to be determined by the people who live in those places. These people are loyal to our country. We have a moral obligation to respect their right to remain British. The government has indicated in the speech that it wishes to work closely with the devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. The publication of the Northern Ireland Bill, which will allow for a reduction in number of Assembly members and consequently a reduction in the cost of government, is something that the DUP welcomes. We will watch very carefully the details, however, of the bill and scrutinise the same. I welcome the commitment to work with the devolved regions, but would urge the government, as part of its programme of cooperation with the devolved regions, to act decisively on the issue of corporation tax for Northern Ireland. Many believe that such a measure would provide an enormous boost to the Northern Ireland economy that would enable the expansion of the private sector and the rebalancing of the Ulster economy away from our over-reliance upon the public sector. The Government has indicated in the speech that there will be continued reform of the welfare system. The DUP supports welfare reform where it is designed to ensure fairness and equality. The benefit regime is a devolved matter, and as part of the Government's ongoing cooperation with the devolved regions, we would urge ministers to continue to work closely with the Northern Ireland Executive to ensure that the most vulnerable in our society are afforded the protection and assistance they deserve. Can I also welcome the proposal that older people will not be forced to sell their homes in order to pay for care? That is a very welcome development, provided it is implemented in a fair way. Mr. Speaker, I cannot conclude my remarks without paying tribute to our brave servicemen and women in theatre of conflict across the world. By their service, they protect us all in their fight against terrorism, and I call upon the Government to ensure that they have all the weaponry necessary that they need, and when they return, they are not forgotten. Those disabled members of our troops and needing care for the rest of their lives must have that care guaranteed to them. Finally, Mr. Speaker, can I welcome the fact that the Government used Her Majesty's speech to reaffirm its commitment to Scotland remaining an integral part of the United Kingdom. These are difficult and trying times for every part of the country, and we believe that the challenges we faced are better faced together.